Spain looks like it recovered. After the catastrophic collapse of 2008, when Spanish unemployment hit 27%, when banks failed, when the housing bubble burst and left ghost developments across the countryside, Spain was supposed to have learned its lesson. The government imposed reforms. The economy started growing again. Unemployment fell. Tourists returned. By 2019, Spain was being held up as a success story. Proof that a Eurozone country could suffer a crisis, accept austerity, and emerge stronger. But that story is a lie. Spain didn't fix its structural problems. It papered over them. And now, beneath the surface of apparent recovery, the same cracks that caused the 2008 collapse are widening again. Spain's economy is not built on solid foundations. It is a house of cards. 6 fragile pillars holding up an economy that looks stable but could collapse at the slightest shock. Pull one card, and the entire structure falls. And the cards are already starting to move. This is the Wealth Records, where every video will change how you see money, history, and the systems controlling your life. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Because what's happening to Spain right now is a warning that economic crises don't end, they just pause. If you're in Spain or have watched the Spanish economy, do you think the recovery was real or just delayed collapse? Drop a comment below. To understand why Spain is a house of cards, you need to understand what happened in 2008. Because Spain's collapse wasn't just severe, it was a case study in how real estate bubbles destroy entire economies. In the early 2000s, Spain experienced one of the largest housing booms in modern history, larger than the United States, larger than Ireland. At the peak, Spain was building more new homes per year than Germany, France, and Italy combined. Entire cities rose from nothing. Coastal developments, inland suburbs, apartment towers, golf courses, everywhere construction. Spanish banks lent recklessly. Mortgages were handed out to anyone who wanted one. Prices rose 200% in a decade. Spanish families, seeing prices climb every year, borrowed as much as they could to buy property. Because in Spain, like in every bubble, everyone believed that real estate could only go up. Then it stopped. In 2008, the global financial crisis hit. Credit froze, buyers disappeared, and the Spanish housing market, built entirely on borrowed money and rising prices, collapsed. Prices fell 40%. Construction stopped overnight. Entire developments half finished were abandoned. Ghost towns appeared. Tens of thousands of unsold apartments sat empty. And the banks, which had lent hundreds of billions for properties now worth half their purchase price, faced catastrophic losses. Unemployment exploded from 8% in 2007 to 27% by 2013. Over 5 million Spaniards lost their jobs. Youth unemployment hit 55%. An entire generation found itself with no work, no income, and no future. Spain's government was forced to bail out the banks. The European Union imposed austerity. Pensions were cut. Wages were slashed. Public services collapsed. And Spain, once one of Europe's fastest growing economies, became a symbol of Eurozone failure. But then, something appeared to change. By 2015, Spain's economy began growing again. Unemployment fell. Tourism boomed. The European Central Bank kept interest rates at zero, making borrowing cheap again. And Spanish property prices started rising. Foreign buyers, especially British and German retirees, returned. Airbnb turned Spanish apartments into short-term rental gold mines, and the narrative shifted. Spain had recovered. The reforms worked. The crisis was over. But that narrative is false, because Spain didn't fix the problems that caused the 2008 collapse. It just rebuilt the same house of cards. And this time, the cards are even more fragile. Card number 1, the real estate bubble 2.0. Spain's first card, the one holding up much of the apparent recovery, is real estate. Again, Spanish property prices have been rising steadily since 2015. In cities like Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia, and Malaga, prices are now at or above their 2008 peak. The same peak that preceded the catastrophic collapse. Foreign investment is pouring in, British buyers, despite Brexit, German retirees seeking Mediterranean sun, Chinese investors parking money in European real estate, and Spanish banks, desperate for growth, are lending again. Mortgages are once again easy to obtain, down payments are shrinking, loan-to-value ratios are rising, and the same optimism that fueled the 2008 bubble has returned. But this time, the bubble is built on even weaker foundations. Because much of the price rise is not driven by Spanish families buying homes to live in. It is driven by speculation, short-term rentals. Airbnb has turned entire neighborhoods in Barcelona and Madrid into tourist zones. Apartments that once housed families are now rented to visitors by the night. Owners make more money from tourists than from long-term tenants. And local residents, priced out of their own cities, are forced to move to the outskirts or leave entirely. This is not a sustainable housing market. This is a speculative bubble fueled by foreign money and tourism, and it is creating the exact conditions that caused the last collapse. Rising prices disconnected from incomes, lending based on the assumption that prices will keep rising, and an economy increasingly dependent on one sector, real estate. Meanwhile, the ghost developments from 2008 are still there, empty, crumbling. Across the Spanish countryside, you can still see the unfinished apartment blocks, the half-built subdivisions, the roads to nowhere. Spain built so much in the 2000s that even now, 15 years later, there is still excess supply. And yet, prices are rising again, because the new buyers are not buying to live. They are buying to speculate, to rent, to flip. The same behavior that created the last bubble. Spain learned nothing. It is rebuilding the same house of cards in the same place where the last one collapsed. And when this bubble bursts, and all bubbles eventually burst, Spain's banks will face the same crisis they faced in 2008. Except this time, there may be no one left to bail them out. Card number 2, the tourism trap. Spain's second card is tourism, and it is the most visible, most celebrated, and most dangerous pillar of the Spanish economy. Tourism accounts for 12 to 15% of Spain's GDP, one of the highest percentages in the developed world. Spain is the second most visited country on Earth, after France. Over 80 million tourists visit Spain every year, more than the entire population of Spain itself. They come for the beaches, the cities, the food, the history, and they bring money, lots of it. Restaurants, hotels, shops, airlines, car rentals, tour guides. Entire regions of Spain depend almost entirely on tourism for survival. The Costa del Sol, the Balearic Islands, Barcelona, Madrid. Without tourism, these economies would collapse overnight. And that is exactly what happened during COVID-19. When the pandemic shut down global travel in 2020, Spain's economy contracted by over 10% in a single year, one of the worst contractions in Europe. Why? Because when tourism stops, Spain has almost nothing else. The services that employ millions of Spaniards disappeared, hotels closed, restaurants went bankrupt, airlines grounded their fleets, and the Spanish government, facing collapsing tax revenues and rising unemployment, had no choice but to borrow massively to keep the economy from total collapse. COVID revealed what economists have been warning about for years. An economy dependent on a single sector is fragile, and Spain's dependence on tourism is extreme. But the problems go deeper than just dependence. Tourism jobs are low-wage, seasonal, insecure. Waiters, hotel cleaners, tour guides, retail workers. These are not the jobs that build a prosperous middle class. They are survival jobs, and increasingly, they are the only jobs available. Because Spain's manufacturing base, once significant, has been hollowed out. Car production, shipbuilding, electronics. These industries have either declined or moved to countries with lower costs. What remains is services, and the dominant service sector is tourism. Spain is becoming a service economy for foreign visitors, a country where young Spaniards work in hotels serving tourists from wealthier countries. This is not economic development, this is economic dependency, and it is politically and socially corrosive, because the young Spaniards working these jobs see no future, no career progression, no ability to buy a home, start a family, or build wealth. They see their cities transformed into tourist playgrounds where they can no longer afford to live, and the resentment is growing. Anti-tourism protests have erupted in Barcelona, Palma de Mallorca, and other cities. Locals spray painting "Tourists Go Home" on walls, blocking tour buses, protesting outside hotels. The backlash against over-tourism is intensifying. And if tourism becomes politically unacceptable, if local governments start restricting it, Spain's economy will face a crisis it is not prepared for. But even if the political backlash doesn't materialize, there is another threat. Climate change. The Mediterranean is heating. Summers are becoming unbearably hot. Wildfires are increasing. Water shortages are worsening. Spain's appeal as a summer destination may not last forever. And Spain has no backup plan. Tourism is card number 2 in the house of cards, and it is far more fragile than it appears. Card number 3, the youth unemployment catastrophe. Spain's third card is its labor market, and it is a disaster. Spain's youth unemployment rate, the percentage of people under 25 who are unemployed, is over 30%, one of the highest in the developed world. During the 2008 crisis, it exceeded 55%. Even now, after years of supposed recovery, nearly 1 in 3 young Spaniards looking for work cannot find it. And those who do find work face temporary contracts. Low wages, no job security. Spain's labor market is divided into 2 tiers. Older workers with permanent contracts have extraordinary protections. They are nearly impossible to fire. They have strong benefits, job security. But those protections make businesses terrified to hire permanent employees. So instead, businesses rely on temporary contracts, short-term, renewable every few months. No benefits, no security. Young Spaniards cycle through these contracts for years, a few months here, a few months there, never knowing if their contract will be renewed, never able to plan a future. The result is that an entire generation, The millennials and Gen Z has been locked out of stable employment. They cannot get mortgages because they have no permanent income. They cannot start families because they have no financial security. And increasingly, they are leaving. Since 2008, over 500,000 young Spaniards have emigrated to the UK, to Germany, to Latin America, anywhere that offers better opportunities. Spain is experiencing a brain drain. Engineers, doctors, scientists, teachers, the educated young people who could drive economic growth and innovation are leaving. And the ones who stay are demoralized, politically radicalized, increasingly drawn to populist parties on both the left and the right that promise to tear down the system. Spain's youth unemployment is not just an economic problem, it is a social and political time bomb. A generation without stable work, without the ability to build wealth, without hope. This is card number 3, and it is cracking. Card number 4, the pension time bomb. Spain's 4th card is its pension system, and like every other southern European country, it is mathematically unsustainable. Spain's birth rate is 1.19 children per woman, one of the lowest in the world. To maintain a stable population, you need 2.1. Spain is not even close. Spain's population is aging rapidly. By 2050, over 30% of Spaniards will be over 65. The ratio of workers to retirees is collapsing. In the 1970s, there were 5 workers for every retiree. Today, there are fewer than 2. By 2050, the ratio will approach 1 to 1. Spain's pension system, like most European systems, is pay-as-you-go. Current workers fund current retirees. It only works if there are enough workers. But there aren't, and there won't be. Pension spending already consumes over 12% of Spain's GDP. As the population ages, that percentage will rise. But the tax base is shrinking. Fewer workers means less tax revenue. Higher unemployment means even less. And Spain, locked in the euro, cannot inflate away the debt or devalue to boost competitiveness. The pension system is heading toward insolvency. And Spain's government knows it. Reforms have been proposed, raising the retirement age, cutting benefits, increasing contributions. But every reform proposal triggers mass protests, strikes, political backlash, because Spanish workers who have paid into the system their entire lives believe they are entitled to the pensions they were promised. And they are not wrong, but the promises were made based on demographics that no longer exist. Spain promised pensions assuming a young, growing population. Instead, it has an old, shrinking one. The mathematics cannot be ignored. The pension system will collapse. Either benefits will be cut, which will devastate retirees, or taxes will rise, which will drive more young people to leave. Or the government will borrow to cover the gap, which will worsen Spain's debt and make the next crisis more severe. There is no good option. Card number 4 is a ticking time bomb, and there is no defusing it. Card number 5, the regional separatism. Spain's 5th card is political, and it is uniquely Spanish. Spain is not a unified nation in the way France or Germany is. Spain is a collection of regions with distinct identities, languages, and histories. Catalonia, the Basque Country, Galicia, Andalusia. Each region sees itself as distinct, and some, especially Catalonia, see themselves as separate nations. In 2017, Catalonia held an independence referendum. The Spanish government declared it illegal. Catalan leaders were arrested, protests erupted, and for a moment it seemed Spain might fracture. The crisis passed, but the underlying tension did not. Catalonia still has a powerful independence movement. Millions of Catalans believe they would be better off as an independent nation, free from Madrid, free to control their own taxes, their own economy, their own future. The Basque Country has its own separatist tradition, though less active now than in the past, and other regions resent the power of Madrid and the dominance of Castilian Spanish. Spain is held together not by a shared national identity, but by political and economic inertia, and that glue is weakening. If Spain faces another severe economic crisis, if unemployment spikes again, if the central government in Madrid is seen as incapable of managing the economy, the separatist movements will surge. Catalonia could try again to leave, and if Catalonia leaves, other regions might follow. Spain, as a unified country, might not survive the next crisis. This is not speculation. This is a real political risk that investors, the European Union, and the Spanish government all understand. Spain is one economic shock away from a constitutional crisis, and constitutional crises destroy economies. Card number 5 is political fragility, and it makes every other card more dangerous. Card number 6, the Euro trap. Spain's 6th and final card is the one it shares with Italy, Greece, and every other southern European country. The euro. Spain needs to devalue its currency. Spanish wages are too high relative to productivity. Spanish exports are not competitive with Germany's. Spanish tourism, while large, operates on thin margins. Spain needs a cheaper currency to boost exports, attract more tourists, and make its labor force competitive. But Spain cannot devalue. It is locked in the euro, a currency designed for Germany's economy, not Spain's. In the past, when Spain faced economic problems, it would devalue the peseta. A cheaper peseta made Spanish goods and services more attractive. It boosted exports. It brought in tourists. It worked. The euro removed that tool. Now, Spain's only option is internal devaluation, cutting wages, cutting pensions, creating unemployment until costs fall. This is what happened during the 2008 crisis. It was brutal. It destroyed lives, and it barely worked. Because internal devaluation shrinks the economy, which reduces tax revenue, which increases the deficit, which requires more borrowing, which makes the debt burden worse. Spain is trapped. It cannot grow its way out because it is not competitive. It cannot devalue because it does not control its currency. And it cannot inflate away debt because the European Central Bank sets policy for Germany, not Spain. The euro is card number 6. And it is the card that ensures all the other cards will eventually fall. So here is why Spain is a house of cards. Each of these 6 pillars, real estate, tourism, youth unemployment, pensions, separatism, and the euro, is fragile on its own. But they are interconnected. If real estate prices collapse, banks fail. If banks fail, unemployment rises. If unemployment rises, tax revenues fall, and the pension crisis worsens. If the pension crisis worsens, young people leave, which worsens the demographic problem. If young people leave, separatist regions argue they are subsidizing a failing state and push for independence. If separatist movements succeed, Spain fragments and the economy collapses entirely. Pull one card and the rest follow. Spain looks like it recovered, but it didn't. It rebuilt the same fragile structure on the same weak foundations. And the next shock, whether a global recession, a banking crisis, a tourism collapse, or a political crisis, will reveal that Spain's recovery was always an illusion. History doesn't repeat, but if you don't understand it, it will crush